All right, so this segment was inspired by Kevin on Twitter. He tweeted this to me. It was either Tuesday night or on Wednesday. He said, quote, @realistic_Randy, how do you feel about possible trade for offensive tackle Williams for a cornerback or possibly Rudolph? I think both parties win there. And when I saw that, I said to myself, Williams, offensive tackle Williams, like who are we talking about? Like Williams is such a common last name. I have no idea. And someone responded and said he's talking about Trent Williams. And I was thinking to myself, Trent Williams, like the Trent Williams, left tackle Trent Williams from the Washington Redskins. Like, sure, the Minnesota Vikings should trade for him, but hell, I want Patrick Mahomes too. Like, what are we talking about here? And so instead of going into further questioning, I said, you know what, let me look up, see what's going on, because I had not heard about anything about Trent Williams up to that point. And so I decided to look on Twitter, which, by the way, Twitter is so amazing because you can find the most up-to-date information in real time on Twitter. I basically say Twitter is essentially Google on crack. So I looked up Trent Williams on Twitter, and I found this. It said, Trent Williams skipped the first day of mandatory minicamp because he is demanding either a new contract or a trade. And to that I said, there it is. Should the Minnesota Vikings trade for Trent Williams? Absolutely. What are we talking about? Let me count the ways. Number one of the best left tackles in the entire game. I'm talking about, I love his hands. I love his strength. But the thing about his hands that's so special is I feel like when it comes to tackles or really any offensive lineman, when pressure's coming towards them, they wait for the pressure or the contact from the defensive lineman to hit them before they engage their arms. Trent Williams actually fights. He actually initiates contact with his arms first. He will do that and just stymie the hell out of that defensive lineman, man. He's a hell of a left tackle. Like I said, one of the best in the game. Great. And you know what's crazy? When you look up his highlights on YouTube, especially last year, it's crazy because he's making hella plays on the offensive line, but Alex Smith is throwing incomplete passes, batted balls, just terrible throws. So half the time, all the great plays that he's making is all for naught, but that dude's a beast, man. This dude would be a complete game changer on this offensive line. Number two, he's familiar with Kirk Cousins. He protected Kirk Cousins' blind side during his time with the Washington Redskins before he came over to Minnesota. And number three, we talk about Drew Samia and how he could be a bully on this offensive line that we need, especially going up against Fletcher Cox or Khalil Mack this upcoming season. We need somebody that's going to be an equal bully to them. Now, the problem with that is he has to first, Drew Samia, he has to first beat out Josh Klein for the right guard spot. We'll see if that all pans out. But with Trent Williams, this dude is an instant plug-and-play left tackle that could be the instant bully that this offensive line can have, in addition to if Drew Samia becomes a starting right guard for the offensive line of the Minnesota Vikings. And when I think about Trent Williams being a bully, man, look on Twitter, or not Twitter, look on YouTube, Trent Williams and Richard Sherman. This is what stands out to me the most. A couple of years ago, now this was actually many years ago, back when Seattle, I believe they visited Washington at FedEx Field, and this was when RG3 was the starting quarterback. And Trent Williams, Richard Sherman, it was like the game was over with, and the players, they get together in the middle of the field. They say, hey, what's up? They shake hands, whatever. And Trent Williams got up in Richard Sherman's face, and Richard Sherman was like, what are you going to do? And Trent Williams said, I'm going to punch you in the mother bleeping face. And Sherman was basically like, all right, do it then. And then Williams gave him a complete, I don't know if it was a punch or a hand palm straight to the face, and to where basically after that, Trent Williams said, I can't say verbatim what he said. I'm going to basically tweak it a little bit, put some rainbows and cupcakes over it. He said, with your rich ass. You know what I'm trying to say. He punched him and he said, yeah, with your rich ass. That is a tough SOB that this team needs. So when you think about a potential offensive line for the Vikings, we'll start from the right side. Brian O'Neill at right tackle, Josh Klein or Drew Samia at right guard. We'll see how it all pans out. Garrett Bradbury, the center, Pat Elflein, the left guard, and Trent Williams, the left tackle. That's a game changer right there, bro. That's a mean offensive line right there. I think the only question mark regarding Trent Williams is his health. Like, that's really, really the only thing. He's missed, let's see, goodness gracious, he's missed 15 games out of the last 4 seasons. So out of a possible 64 games, he's missed 15 games out of the last 4 seasons. So you know what? Would you take that on? Is that a risk that's worth rolling the dice? Absolutely. Now, as far as how the Vikings can go about making this happen, obviously Riley Reiff would be the starting piece in a potential trade. So with Riley Reiff, that's the starting point right there, the left tackle. Do a swap for swap. That's not going to get it done by itself. Riley Reiff, he's a patchwork left tackle, whereas Trent Williams is a Hall of Fame left tackle. But this is the starting point right here. Riley Reiff has an $11.7 million cap hit for 2019. By trading him, the Vikings would save $9.5 million. So they'd eat a dead cap of $2.2 million. They'd save $9.5 million against the cap. Then, by trading for Trent Williams, they take on $11.1 million of cap hit for Trent Williams. So, Washington, they would take on about a $5.5 million dead cap hit, but the Vikings would take on 11.1. And then, if you're just doing a straight-up trade, just Riley Reiff for Trent Williams, again, that's not going to get it done, but this is the starting point. If they were to trade just swap for swap, straight-up trade, the Vikings would then incur an additional $1.6 million in cap hit. So, in looking at that, with what else that it's going to take, maybe you could throw in a future third-round pick, maybe the 2020 draft, or maybe a player. So when it came to the players and the rosters and the money and everything like that, the only realistic players that I saw that the Vikings could look to trade is, number one, Laquan Treadwell and his he has a $3.1 million cap hit. Wouldn't that be, oh no, man, that would be such a huge loss if we left Laquan Treadwell and traded him away. But you know what? Of all the teams that would trade for Laquan Treadwell, it would be the Washington Redskins because they're the most moronic, stupid franchise in the entire NFL, maybe besides the LA Chargers with Dean Spanos running the show. Dan Snyder is essentially the new Jerry Jones of the 2010 years. So now Jerry Jones, he's deflected or delegated to his brother. I believe his name is Steven Jones. But Dan Snyder is a terrible owner. They would trade for Laquan Treadwell. I wouldn't even be surprised if they did that. But realistically speaking, Laquan Treadwell out the picture. Kyle Rudolph may have to be the guy to go. So Kyle Rudolph, he has a $7.6 million cap hit. If you include him with Riley Reiff and trade him for Trent Williams, the Vikings would free up, combine those two, Kyle Rudolph and Riley Reiff for Trent Williams. The Vikings would free up $6 million in cap room with that trade if it were to take place. Now, again, durability is a question mark with Trent Williams, but I would take that on, especially when you're going up against Khalil Mack twice into the season. That's something that is a game-changing offensive line right there. Now, the sacrifice is with Gary Kubiak, 2 tight end sets. By trading away Kyle Rudolph, it's gone, but is it worth it to trade away Kyle Rudolph for a Hall of Fame left tackle? Yes, it is. Yeah, it really, really is, guys. And besides, you have Jordan Taylor that would serve at the wide receiver 3, at least for right now. He's getting all the hype in goodness, where are we at? OTAs, mandatory minicamp, wherever we're in the process right now of off-season workouts. Or you could have Jordan Taylor be the wide receiver 3 and have Irv Smith Jr. be your tight end. So we talked about before, if they're doing 2 tight end sets, you don't need a third wide receiver. You could just have Irv Smith, Kyle Rudolph, Diggs, Thielen, Dalvin Cook, and you're fine. Well, guess what? You could have Jordan Taylor as wide receiver 3 and Irv Smith as the tight end, and that could possibly make up for the loss of Kyle Rudolph. So should they make the trade? Absolutely. It's right there for the taking. It's very possible. We'll see if they go ahead and do that. So anyway, we do this 3 times a week. Mediokr Best Sports Podcast with Realistic Randy. This was a lot of fun. Thanks again to Kevin, because I had no idea this was even a thing brewing in Washington. Check me out on Twitter at realistic_Randy, Facebook at Realistic Randy. The next podcast will be on my personal YouTube channel, Realistic Randy. We'll see you then.